Stewardship is 100%. That means that everything we have is God's. Stewardship is 100%. What does that mean? It means that everything in our lives is God's. It means that a lot more than just thinking about how we give at church of our times, our talents, and our treasures. It means how do we spend the rest of our time and our resources. We spend 167 hours of our week not at church. And we're called to be a good steward of all of those things here and outside of church. In both the Old and New Testaments, there's lots of conversation about how we steward our resources and how we live together in community. This fall at Roseville Lutheran, we've been talking about how we be financial stewards and what does it mean to give to the church and give back to God what is God's. Today, however, we're going to talk a little bit more about what it means that stewardship's 100%. It's not just about what we give here at church, but it's how we live our lives. And today we're going to talk about what that means in a financial context. Mark Allen Powell, in his book, Giving to God, uses the acronym ARMS, A-R-M-S, to talk about how we might think about being a financial steward. A, how do we acquire our money? R, how do we regard our money? M, how do we manage our finances? And lastly, S, how do we spend? A, how do we acquire our money? Do we do that in a way that's pleasing to God and furthers God's mission in the world? Martin Luther talks a lot about vocation. And I think that thinking about our vocation, that we might even get paid to do that thing that we're called to do, it's a remarkable thing. However, there's also a lot of conversation in the Bible, potentially, about acquiring things in a not so godly way. And we're called to acquire our wealth and our money in a way that's pleasing to God. That vocation to what we're called to be in the world. Frederick Buechner, the recently passed theologian, says the place to which we are called is where the world's deep hunger meets our deepest desire. And I think thinking about that is potentially how we think about, am I acquiring my money in the right way? R, regard. How do we regard our wealth? It's written in the New Testament that the love of money is the root of evil. It's not money itself, it's the love of it. How much time and effort do we spend thinking about it? Sometimes the best thing we do potentially about our finances is maybe not think about it all the time. Money and wealth aren't something to hate or despise, nor are they something to love. Money is something to be used to make the world better. And as we think about that in the context of stewardship, that helps frame that slightly differently, to go from not talking about money, but to instead talking about it as something that we use in the world. And our relationships with money, how we regard it, is incredibly important to think about. Do I spend all my time wondering about how do I get more? Never enough, never enough. Or how do I have this thing and use it in a way that shows that it's truly God's? M, manage. How do we manage our money? Money is something to be used, not hoarded. M for manage also means how do we think about living together in community in a way that helps us be financially well? We have a lot of people potentially that we interact with who might need help in thinking about how do they spend and manage and acquire in a way that lets them be financially and even spiritually well. We can work on that together. We're also called to manage our money in a way that makes the world better. Do we invest our money in an ethical way? Do we support things that further God's mission in the world? Do we stay away from things that don't? How do our resources impact the environment? All of those things are really important as we think about how we're called to manage our money in the context of stewardship being 100%. S, for spend. How do we spend our money in the context of stewardship being 100%? I sometimes like to think about this as we've read together this fall, that stewardship and spending is actually about how we love God and love our neighbor. The writer John Westerhoff suggests stewardship is about giving up the love of possessing and practicing a life of simplicity, developing the habit of giving things away, buying only what is absolutely necessary, of rejecting anything to do with which we are addicted, of learning to enjoy things without owning them, of developing a greater appreciation of the natural world, and of rejecting anything that will result in an injustice to others. We're called to spend our money in a way that makes the world better and furthers God's mission in it. So stewardship is 100%. What does that mean? It means we're called to acquire our wealth and our money in a way that's pleasing and in keeping with God's way of being in the world, to regard our money in a way as something to be used rather than hoarded, to manage our money in a way that makes the world a better place and is in keeping with God's principles, and spend our money in a way that furthers our mission of loving God and loving our neighbor.